Oh, my.
Tim, we're just waiting for Sally. Okay, I haven't heard back from Sally yet, but I know she's planning on attending, so it's 5:06 p.m. and we are starting the Personnel and Ordinance Committee meeting. And Sally will be joining us shortly, I'm sure. Okay, so for tonight's agenda, I have on here the let me pull everything up on my other computer here. Discussing the outdoor dining standards and the bump out program that was started with COVID and has continued since. I put a little background in the memo in your packet. But this was prioritized with the trustees in our last retreat and to kind of discuss some of the issues that we're having with the current bump out program and kind of how we can best move forward or what we want to do with this program. So would you like me to provide more background than that, like go over the packet information, or would you like to jump into discussing? Hi, Sally, there she is.
I think we can just go issue by issue.
Okay. Hi.
Hello.
I brought a water bottle.
Nice.
It doesn't have water yet, but there's hot water over there too for tea. but it actually warmed up in here for once.
Feels so cozy. I love it.
Right, so going through our current dining standards, I kind of broke it out. I have some comments in, the actual dining standards. Do we want to go through that, or do we want to go through kind of the higher level issues that we have with our bump out program that was outlined in the memo?
Whatever is the most helpful for you.
Okay, so we kind of identified like 5 main issues. The first one is they're allowed from May 1st to October 31st. And in the month of May, we have a lot of maintenance that we're doing on our streets, including street washing, line painting, and we have the Iron Horse event. So we've run into issues with putting bump outs out and then having them being taken back, and kind of the compliance of that and having town staff doing that. So it hasn't been streamlined in the past, and we wanted to kind of reapproach that on if May is really the ideal time to have a bump out. So that's our first issue, and we can go through these one by one. I also want to evaluate the whole program too, and if this is something that you guys want to continue.
So I was just thinking, since Austin just joined and we have Tiffany here, it might be interesting to just get their feedback to frame our discussion
Yeah, and the board's okay with that,
and find out like,
I mean, with the committee.
and also ask you like generally about the program, like, is there pushback against having it? Like generally, do we want it? Do we not want it? If we want it, let's figure out how to address the town's issues as good as possible, but also like, how beneficial is it for the business owners? And how it's, you know, what are the friction points for the business owners, so that as we're thinking about this, we're not just thinking about the town side.
You want to hear from them first?
Does that sound good to everybody?
Great. Well, Tiffany, you're in person. Do you want to join us?
I mean, and no pressure, just like
Yeah.
on the bump outs, like what works, what doesn't, could it be improved, you know?
I think overall it's a great experience for the visitor. And also it's of a great benefit for, say, sales tax. I think it's been successful, and I guess that's what that's kind of an overview.
Okay, and I'll ask Austin the same thing, but if there's like fees associated with it, would it still?
It would not bother me.
Okay, as long as they're like commensurate with like the amount of benefit.
But I would say that there may be businesses that possibly can't afford that, or whatever that may look like, that you would take into consideration. Take that into consideration.
Cool. Austin, can we ask you to weigh in as well?
Yeah, sure. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, just, the bump out has been a really positive experience for our business. I think the argument that I made when I was on the board is that we look at seeding as a potential revenue source. And the biggest thing that I think the town needs to consider is how much sales tax revenue that brings in the summer. And it's substantial. I'd have to go through specifically and look at the numbers that I had kind of generated before, but I had thought that it might generate something, I think like $30,000 or $40,000 for our business in sales tax revenue, which is, somebody's position. I think I'd be interested to hear a little bit more about staff problems, especially during the month of May, for the last 2 years for sure. I don't think that we've had any staff support whatsoever for getting our bump out set up or for taking it down. We pick them up ourselves, we drop them off at the end. And I understand some of the concerns with Iron Horse, but man, that's one of the biggest events that people love to sit outside and be able to kind of cheer the race coming in. I'd say May is more important to have it than October is later in the season. And that's more of the time where we run into snow issues is in the later fall.
Well, thank you. I think we might ask some input from both of you as we continue our discussions as well.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Cool. Okay, back to you, Gloria.
Okay. All right, so in moving, so I guess I'll just go down kind of the bigger issues that we have. And then, so the guide states that the allowance of the barricade areas and parking spaces is allowed on Green and Blair Street. So we do have a business that has been administratively approved to operate on side streets. And we need to really define this in our outdoor dining guide, because currently that's not allowed in our outdoor dining guide. We have no like record or anything, and we would like to make sure that that is kind of clear moving forward if we continue with the program. And then we also provide barricades, and either our staff has set it up or the restaurant has their staff set it up. We've come into several issues where we now have a barricade shortage in town. And that was in part too, because we did put barricades up at Silverton Square as well after that was burnt. So last year in particular, we were very short on barricades and ended up having to borrow barricades. So that's just something to keep in mind. It does limit us. I'm hoping that we don't have as well, Silverton Square might still be needing barricades.
They're gonna have to rent their own.
Yeah. So just something to keep in mind as we move forward with providing our own equipment and our staff time for that. Then the definition of the actual frontage of the building has been debated in years past, and this needs to be better defined if the program's going to continue. And there's also no provision in the outdoor dining standards that says that you actually have to use your like a use it or lose it. So in years past, we've had someone take out a have a barricade up, but not actually use it. And we had nothing to say like, well, you have to use it or you lose it. So that was an issue in the past as well. And also our parking spaces. So in areas where it's really congested and busy, like it's really difficult to kind of navigate around those areas that have taken up those parking spaces. So.
Okay. All right, Jim, what do we do?
Hey, thank you. I echo the same sentiment about the parking spaces. That's what I've been told over the past several years. Parking has been an issue. Non-conformity has become an issue. We're allowed at X amount of spaces in front of our storefronts, and it's turned into multiple spaces over multiple storefronts. And trying to get uniformity, I think, is paramount.
Okay. Agreed. Do you have a recommendation in mind?
I think at the very least, kind of mirroring what Durango does as far as coming up with guidelines specifically to the design and the placement of the barricades and how they look, as well as they do it by square footage of the barricaded area. So a small charge to make up for the time facilitating the program. And then also maybe thinking about it as like, if we do make money in this, it's beyond staff time, like that can go to like beautification of downtown or wayfinding or something like that, that would, just to kind of offset some of the
the cost and the burden, but, or looking at, redoing parking in downtown, something that would, that the funding could contribute to.
Yeah.
If there's funding beyond what is staff time.
Do you have a admin fee range in mind?
Well, and I was looking at Durango's and that's kind of where I thought of like that square footage. So if we wanted to consider a square footage, but I also didn't want to deep dive too deep into this until I was given direction to keep going and like really look at the program. I just really wanted to raise these issues as well. And Bevan, did I miss anything? 'Cause you've been enforcing this.
I don't think so. I mean, those are the key
Okay.
issues.
I mean, my knee jerk is unless we're having a parking crisis or a safety issue, we should allow the program to continue. Because anyone who just doesn't want to participate doesn't have to. And I also haven't heard any super negative feedback about the impact on parking for other businesses that aren't restaurants. Because it's not like every single storefront we have downtown is restaurants. We still have a decent amount of parking. So as a general matter, I think we should do bump outs again this year.
I would add to that, I think I've said this actually in other meetings, that the town's, I think if I were the owner of a restaurant, I would want to know that if this was a long-term commitment on the part of the town, and we could set up some guidelines and create some conformity and some standardization of like what the expectations are for how businesses run the program and clean up potentially or offset some of the burdens that you've mentioned for town. I think it's a really awesome addition to our downtown area, and it's already sort of a walking feel, and yeah, we've got the parking issues maybe or safety, but that doesn't sound like it's been overly burdensome. And I think once businesses know that we're committed to it and that we've invested and prioritized some guidelines and cleaned it up, then they might feel more confident in investing in the whole thing. Like if I were a business and I'm like, well, this could go away in a year, I'm gonna stick with the town barricades. If it seems like something that we're going to really use to enhance the dining experience of summer visitors and residents in Silverton, then I might say it's worth me figuring out how to spruce it up and store the materials for the winter and, make it look really good. So to me, it's like more of a commitment thing. Like, are we doing it or are we not doing it? Because I think if we commit to it, we can just execute to a higher standard.
And I want to say the last ordinance did commit to it. So it's not like we would have to pass another
Ordinance. We just have to update the guidelines.
Right, and it does reference the outdoor dining standard guidelines.
Mhm.
So if we did continue with the program, what we would do is update those guidelines and it'd be referenced in the ordinance.
Yep, I remember that. I think that's the last time I made this comment.
Yeah.
That's generally, then I think in terms of the date range, like things really do kind of fall off a cliff around mid-October. So I think we could end it a little bit early, even though it's really just the snow issue and not cleaning the streets or painting lines in the fall that we're dealing with. May, I've noticed, has become much, much busier than it was in the past. May 1st, not so much, but sometime around mid-May, things do pick up quite a bit. I wonder if there's a compromise where, we could plan to do our street cleaning and line painting in the first 2 weeks of May, especially in a year like we probably will have this year where the snow melts relatively early, rather than needing the entire month.
And that would just we're at the whim of the contractors for that.
Yeah.
So we don't know when we can do it until May, basically.
Yeah.
We kind of have to wait until the snow melts and then we can say, okay, can you guys come up and do this instead of do.
So like if we wanna prioritize certainty, then I guess June 1st is good. But if we want to be accommodating, I think sometime in mid-May might be better. And perhaps we can pressure our contractors to commit to the first 2 weeks of May. And that still gives them like a pretty broad window. but I guess it just depends if we can exert that pressure or not successfully.
Do we want to end it in mid-October then?
I mean, I guess it depends, like if the town or a private event, or if the town or a private party starts to like create an event or reason to come here throughout October, or if businesses stay open, like a lot of our summer restaurants are closed halfway through October, even if the train's still running. So I guess it just depends, like, is it taxing on the town to allow these to kind of like fade out of existence throughout October, or do we want to hard date this a little earlier so we can be just like, summer's over, time to set for winter? Like, I guess it's just whatever's best for the town. I don't think we're having significant business impact if we shut it down in, you know, October 15th.
Yeah, I think actually in that, like in October, we're trying to encourage businesses to stay open because the train is still coming and we need to provide those services.
And also like how, like,
But is a bump out an element of encouraging the business
Right.
to stay open?
I can't tell if Austin's hand's still up or newly up, if he wants to add to the conversation. Do we want to just leave him on as a panelist?
Let's, see if we can.
Yeah, and Tiffany.
Austin, if you want to just jump in as we say things that are either triggering or supportive, you're welcome to.
And
Yeah,
this,
I just had a couple comments about a couple different things. The parking issue, like, if you do it by actual square, frontage of a building, we're in a little different situation than Durango because we don't have parallel parking on Main Street, we have angle parking. So in the past, we've always tried to do angle parking and go with the parking so that we're maximizing our neighbors' parking for their retail store. And it's always been a little confusing as to whether the town would like us to do it that way or to come straight out from our building. But essentially, we'd be taking up more parking if it came straight out of the frontage of our building than if we're going with the angle of the parking. Yeah, that was the main comment that I had.
Got it.
that's part of clarity, I think, in,
So yeah, I don't have and I guess like, you know, you can think on it more, and then whenever we present some updated proposal to the board, it could either be, you know, it could still be June through October 31st or some variation based on whatever you guys think is the best balance. In terms of side streets, I think it should be the same as Green and Blair. Like, I think we should have a maximum amount of bump out size, whether it's by number of parking spaces or square footage. And if there's a business on a corner and they want to wrap the corner or just be on the side street or just be on Green Street or just be on Blair Street, I think that's fine, but I think there should be a maximum footprint. So I think about High Noon is on a cross street. And that's the primary, like the bump out is primarily on the cross street, not on Blair. And I think that's fine as long as it's limited to a total number of spaces as opposed to being able to like wrap the entire frontage of a building that happens to be on a corner.
or like if a new restaurant were to come in on where Handlebars used to be,
Mhm.
they would be in that situation.
Yeah, they would have a huge amount of
Kind
bump
of.
out space between Green Street and
I think it's like a shopping.
like
center.
13th.
Yeah.
Whatever they're on.
But they should be allowed, I think, to, if that became a restaurant again. I'm just thinking of the potential of like where this exists. It's Tiffany's, it's the Handlebars. It seems like the Handlebars location as a restaurant should have the same access to the opportunity that businesses that front Blair and Green have.
Yeah. So I don't really differentiate between Green, Blair and a side street as long
Yeah.
as the number of spaces allowed is fair.
And may I do think that there, just say, on Blair Street in front of High Noon is a stop sign. So I really couldn't put something up that would obstruct
Right.
seeing that stop sign. The same with the potential rendezvous location, there's a stop sign, so how close, say, would you, I mean, maybe you wanna be, I don't know, 20
defining
feet from the stop sign, 15 feet from the stop sign, so that
Yeah.
people are able to clearly see that there is a stop sign.
I think we probably need to use the same protocols we used around the parking with the school. Because we had setbacks for stop signs around the school.
Mhm.
Yes, and then they, like, say Pickle Barrel also, there is a stop sign, so how.
No.
It's the same,
Right,
right?
if they were to put 10 or above how, what would that?
You know, it'd just be like parking, like you can't park within 20 feet of the stop sign. So we keep it to that. And I think there's a concern certainly on side streets where we directed traffic from down 12th Street by putting a barrier up to allow them to walk through. Was that effective or helpful for you this year?
Some folks used it and some didn't.
Right.
Of course, right, they walk in the street.
Right.
Anyway, in some ways, but it did invite them to go and then just from having the outside dining for 4 years now, we have never encountered anyone hitting them. We get there between 8 and 9 a.m. 7 days a week during the summer. And then we're there till 5, 6 o'clock at night. So I just wanted to say, like, when we arrive at 8 and 9 in the morning, we don't see that anything has ever been hit. You know, I'd be totally wrong if we did have something like that occur, because that's, you know, also our liability. I did call our insurance company, which you also all require us to do, that we extend our dining out to the street with insurance. So, but anyway, I just wanted to.
Yeah. And I think, you know, it did happen in Durango, but the Durango downtown is much busier from a traffic perspective than we are. So I think it's safer here to be a pedestrian.
And the streets appear to be narrower than here.
Yeah, it's almost like a roundabout effect on traffic. It just sort of slows itself naturally when it gets really busy. But I am wondering, as we look ahead and think about, okay, it seems like we have good support for continuing the program. And there are the town side issues that need to get cleaned up and ironed out. It sounds like there's it's positive opportunity for businesses. I think that the Durango, you know, guideline in here is useful just to see kind of what it could look like, and potentially in the continuation of the program, it might just be worth, I don't know. I don't want to, staff time is really precious. I want to acknowledge that this may not be the best idea, but I am wondering about looking at like a community like Delta, or just because Durango does have, you know, more economic resources available to them, and their restaurants are making a different annual amount than our restaurants are. So just looking at what this maybe looks like somewhere in between Durango and Silverton. So businesses feel supported and the town is capable of enforcing and executing and, you know.
I would be curious on how our business owners feel about, and Austin has his hand up, and so I'm gonna ask this and then you can answer this with whatever you're commenting on, but how you all feel about the barricades versus something else. I realize like the barricades do provide a level of safety that maybe if you were to make something out of wood or something wouldn't. And so I just kind of wanted to get your feedback on the use of the barricades and if there was another option. Because we are running into those shortages. Or we try to purchase more. So. Go ahead, Austin, sorry.
Yeah, you know, I think that the original idea of the barricades was equity, to try and make it kind of the same for all businesses. I don't think the biggest advantage of the barricades for the businesses is storage, because most business owners don't have a ton of extra storage on site to be able to store, platforms and all kinds of other things. In a place like Durango, obviously, there's a lot more rural properties where restaurant owners can be able to store some of their wares in the winter without damage out on the mesa and some of the warmer climates south of town. But yeah, I think either way, it'd be okay to develop something on our own, or if the town purchased more barricades, I think making a fee equitable to recoup the cost of purchasing more barricades, I think is kind of either way. And one other thing I just wanted to mention too is I think every year, there's somebody new who's in charge of doing the licensing for the town, and I'm not sure once we've ever been able to actually get our bump outs up and rolling by the date that's specified on there. So it would be helpful to be able to go in and sign up for our paperwork and be able to have a firm date. There always seems to be a little bit of back and forth about street cleaning and things like that. We've often had to move our barricades in the middle, and after we've set them up, a week or two after we set them up, which isn't a problem, but it would be nice on the town side if there was some consistency year to year from that.
Do you have anything on the barricade issue?
No.
Okay.
I don't know, something like you said, if we can build or create something on our own, but like you said, maybe safety. I mean, iron is probably, I would say metal possibly, but then I don't know, like in the instance in Durango where something did occur, they put didn't they put concrete barricades on each corner of the dining?
Yeah, like the end caps that sort of led into the black, bit out, and just the end caps of the
But
black.
that's with help from the city, but I'm not sure where to take that. I mean, in my case, I would be willing to invest in something that might look quite nice, but you all have to probably come up with specifications as to what that would be like safety wise,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, okay. So I guess totally. I think to recap, dates, whatever you guys recommend. Amount of space and side streets, it should be uniform. Based on some easy to measure standard. Barricades, sounds like we can still provide them if they want to provide their own. Maybe it's just subject to administrative approval. Like we just have to review the design and materials that they want to use. That seems fine. Side streets, yes, of course. And then we didn't really talk about it yet, but the
Use it or
use it or lose it, I think makes sense, but I also think there needs to be some type of notice because someone may want a bump out just for July. And they'll apply for it for the season and then be like, yeah, but I don't really need it in June, or I don't want to staff for it in June and October. So I think if in the application we could add whether or not they plan to use it for the full season or the date range they plan to use it for, then that'd be a better indicator for us for use it or lose it. So that if we see it's not up by like June 15th, we're not like, okay, it's gone for you this season.
No, I think
that
that
would
the issue we had was
you know.
someone erected it and had it and never used it. So there was just taking out 2 parking spaces.
Say like if they have to provide an application, what date range they want to use it for, and if it's not erected within 10 days of, that date range, then lose it. Unless they, amend their application or something.
Right.
And something that's not on here that I was curious about, because people haven't really gotten this creative yet, but I think they might in the near future, if it continues to be a thing, is what about bump outs not for food purposes? What about bump outs that support businesses independent of the business that's inside? So like, what if an art gallery asks to have a bump out and they set up
a
things,
coffee
or and they set up a coffee stand outside, like, does Durango or other towns that are more robust than us have parameters around those and can we anticipate that? So we're not reacting midsummer when somebody all of a sudden sets something up that we didn't think about ahead of time. Because I think there's a lot of opportunity for creative uses of the bump outs that we haven't seen yet. And I thought about that in connection with, one of the applications we have tonight.
Mhm.
That's like, there's some additional opportunity for like retail and business with really low barriers to entry if they could get someone who had Green, Blair, or side street on Green or Blair retail frontage to agree to support them.
Mhm.
So like, are there parameters around that? And I think generally we should be supportive of creative uses as long as it's not sketchy.
Or in violation of a code.
Totally.
And I don't have any of those answers right now, but, or have we researched those that would take a little bit more time without having an application in front of us to kind of say, like, this is what this particular business wants to do. It's kind of difficult. I hate to say that because government's
No, I agree.
It seems like
active, but then
Liberty is,
it's time.
That needs to be something presented to us or decided upon at the next trustee meeting that this gets considered, but I think that's something good to like think about, like, how will we react if an art gallery puts a coffee stand in a bump out? Or
or
a coffee shop puts an art gallery in a bump out, like, or whatever it is.
Mhm.
Like, I've never considered putting a bump out. I have a huge amount of outdoor space in our courtyard, but like, Jim could have a bump out. Like, there's plenty of stuff going on up there. And I know that it doesn't seem like you plan to, and you have to park across the street. But I'm just saying, like, there's opportunity for more stuff than we're seeing today. And maybe that demand for using that space differently will increase in the future if this continues.
Seems like we would need a separate guide for that, or we'd amend.
it seems like
Right.
it's good to just have it out there, be ready to anticipate, but not prioritize as part of this.
Totally.
Bump
Yeah, I'd
out
love that with
program.
like,
Just like-
if when you're researching Durango rules about this, if they have stuff on it, be like, oh, okay. They thought about it
Yeah,
for us.
we definitely.
Because we have had, things like with food carts or signage or ways of using the public right-of-way space that connects to a business that can create confusion. I can see if it,
Yeah, like we have some really conflicting rules right now. So for example, like we can't put a sandwich board on the sidewalk promoting a business,
Yeah.
but we can have a bump out
yeah.
for that same business in all the parking spots with signage along the whole bump out. And so there's just like some interesting things that we're navigating that we haven't had to navigate before.
The signage for that reflects walkway space.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's part of it.
It's not the signage per se, it's just the object that impedes traffic.
Yeah.
And I'd say to having smaller businesses that are local come in, it might be we dedicate an area where parking isn't strained,
And it becomes a market, like an outdoor market.
right, something, so, and then it creates a space where people know to go to that, so they're not distributed randomly, but focused.
And the other idea we had was, they sell covers for the bump outs.
Like sales. Is that what it was referred to?
Yeah, kind of.
Or keep going.
Over the bump out.
Like a canopy.
Yeah, just for aesthetic purposes, if we still use our current bump outs, or our current barricades. It's an idea that we had to make it look a little better.
I think that's awesome as long as the cost can be packaged into
Yeah,
whatever admin fees we're charging.
yeah.
So the town's not investing too heavily in it.
I do wonder if businesses have enough momentum from this program so far and they see the town support. If some barricades become available because businesses can implement like something else that maybe is more visually enticing for their business that they weren't willing to invest in previously, but it's had some momentum now, or I don't know. And then maybe it frees up barricades for other businesses that are needing just the foothold into trying it out or something like that. Who knows? That's not very helpful, but
No, but
I'm optimistic that like with enough momentum and enough practice and enough income generated, that over time businesses can start to get creative with the way that the visual impact of the bump outs.
okay. So our next steps are gonna be to kind of after all these conversations is to, make edits.
Oh, Jim has something, maybe Austin does too. Oh, Jim is noting Austin.
Hey, thanks, guys. Sorry, just one more thing that I just thought about too, that actually in the years that we've done the bump outs, never considered. But the historic aspect of the town, it might be, you know, if you start getting into allowing restaurants to have their own, you know, style of bump outs, then it probably pretty quickly devolves into going to the historic review committee and getting those designs approved. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. I just was like, oh, you know, if I was going to do my own design, and I was thinking, oh, the Historic Society may not like what I propose, or what some other restaurant was going to propose for that. So just something to consider.
That's a good thought. My knee-jerk reaction is that I don't think the historic review committee needs to review temporary things, and that administratively it probably could just come to be like, do the sniff test. Is this extremely offensive, or is it reasonable? And if it feels to be offensive, then elevate it to a committee or a board so that you don't have to be the bad guy.
Well, and hopefully we can define that in the guidelines so that someone didn't come up with like a.
Yeah, that's what Durango does, but in the event that we don't cover everything, that's a good catch-all.
Yeah, no, it's a good call.
I think we all
And
know
I think that
this, the intent.
Right, yeah.
Sorry.
I think fences are specifically labeled as exempt from historic review. I'm just thinking about the potential lashback or complaints that you guys might get.
Yeah. I mean, when somebody sets up the DJ booth with strobe lights and other very modern looking things.
Speakers.
I know we had at one time talked about pets or dogs in the dining area. Is that something that we should still address?
Is there anything that the current health overseer says about that? Because it changed, right? San Juan Basin Public Health is no longer our
Right.
Right.
inspector.
I can investigate that aspect of it. I was thinking of it from the standpoint of if they are in the area around food where dogs get reactive, that they be leashed. And that we define clearly.
That been an issue? I mean, yeah, I know exactly. I agree with you. Austin has his hand up again.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just never lowered it. But I can certainly share some perspective or experience with, the San Juan Basin Health folks have been very against dogs in dining areas, but that usually that usually is reserved for an area that's connected to a kitchen. And with the bump outs, actually, they've been a lot more friendly about it. So it has allowed those folks to be able to use those dining areas with their pets and restaurant owners to comply with the health code enforcement and regulations. Personally, I think it's absolutely ridiculous how many people need to eat with their badly behaved dogs. If you guys, decided to say no more dogs outside because of the nuisance that they are, I would completely understand. I've had employees be bitten by dogs. I've had full trays of food taken out of servers' hands. I've had dogs try to take off of tables and every kind of, pee, poop, puke inside of those bump out areas that then have to be cleaned up in the middle of service hours. So it's it's not a convenient thing for restaurant owners, but man, it's a huge thing for these people who own these pets that they have to have their dogs with them when they eat.
Do you see any reason why, if it's not illegal from a food service perspective, do you see any reason why it can't just be on a case by case basis where the Avalanche could say like, this is not a dog friendly bump out? Or would you prefer to have the town make a decision for everybody?
I don't think the town should weigh in on it, but then again, if there's enough complaints and things, I completely understand from your guys' perspective. But it is, I mean, it's a hard percentage of people to ignore who want to come and eat outside with their pets.
I mean, I think we can have rules that are similar, says like, if a restaurant chooses to allow dogs in its bump out, then those dogs must be leashed and under control. And there must be, cleaning protocols if they pee or poop in the space.
Yeah, I brought it up, not for contention, more just to make sure that we're addressing.
Cover it.
And then
We need.
something that there's always like a funny conflict with like who bears the brunt of the rule. So like, I think it's often unfair if the restaurant allows a dog in the bump out and then the dog creates a problem, like, is it really the restaurant's fault or responsibility to enforce the dog related rules if they're trying to, and there isn't any like teeth behind it? And I think maybe it would be better if the offending person was subject to a potential ticket or fine rather than restaurant.
Right.
So like if a dog, I mean, I guess, if a dog bites somebody on somebody's premises, then that's a whole thing that already has structure around it. But like, if Austin goes to somebody and says your dog's not on leash, they have to be on leash to be there, and they ignore him, like, should he be able to call you and get them a $25 ticket?
I think so.
So like, I think that's something that could be built in if we're going to be pet friendly.
And I wanted to support the businesses in having it. I'm a dog owner of two and, but I also know Austin's, plight of dog owners not taking responsibility for managing their dogs.
I think it's kind of nice also to have that middle ground of like a restaurant owner being able to approach somebody who's breaking the rules and say like, hey, it's not just me, this is a town rule.
Exactly.
And if they catch you, you're going to get a $25 ticket.
Yeah.
So I'm partly bringing it up to support you guys in doing that.
I think that's a good thing to include.
Any other?
I think that'd be great. I have no problem telling disruptive dog owners that their dogs aren't allowed to be there anymore. But it certainly doesn't help. It certainly doesn't hurt to have some extra teeth.
But I also think that should maybe like be code enforcement and not law enforcement.
Yes. Yeah. And that's it. I don't want the restaurant owners to be the bad guys in it. And the sheriff's got enough on his plate. So I'm happy to support the businesses with that. And
Cool.
Do our best to remind people of their responsibilities.
Has this been helpful in providing some direction for what to present to the board, or is there any other things that you'd like us to weigh in on?
Yeah, if you don't mind, if we go back with staff and kind of go through all of these lists and hopefully have something back in front of the board. If we do need to call another P&O committee to kind of review it prior to the board, we might do that. But we're going to try and get this done before May so that we have a very solid program coming up with point persons and just make it a lot more streamlined.
I'd say like, as you're going through this, if any of these issues spin out into too complex, like, and you think that there's things that are priorities and things that are just nice to have, like I'm definitely okay with you just focusing on priorities.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
Jim, anything else? Cool.
All right, it is 5:52 and we will conclude the Personnel and Ordinance Committee meeting. We've got 8 minutes until our housing authority meeting.
One down, two to go.
I'm gonna love.
Events. Let's really enjoy it.
We'll be doing a stretched yoga class over in the corner for the next 8 minutes.
Yeah. Break.
All right,
Thank you
thank
guys for letting us participate.